But the idea is that we're all interdependent. We need each other. Every single living herb, every living species has a service to perform for the entire ecosystem. Nothing is useless. Everything has a meaning and a purpose.
Welcome to the Creative Solutions Podcast. On the show, it's my job to tease out the creative solutions my guests are coming up with to change the world through creativity, social action, and mindset. I also give you tips and techniques so you can do the same. This episode is brought to you by my class, Meditation for Busy People, where you'll learn how to relieve stress and discover clarity and joy in just 5 minutes a day. It's also brought to you by the Brain FM app and this podcast's host, Podbean. Also, follow the podcast on Instagram or TikTok and check out our shop for merch, music, and musings. The links are all in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the Creative Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. Thank you so much for being here, and I am so thrilled to welcome this week's guest. You are going to love this gentleman, Paul Rodney Turner. Paul is the founder of Food for Life Global, and he's dedicated his life to the compassionate cause of feeding the world's most vulnerable populations. Born in Sydney, Australia, Turner's innate humanitarian spirit led him to become a devout monk from the age of 19 until the age of 33. And this spiritual foundation transformed his vision of service, inspiring him to establish Food for Life Global in 1995. Turner, also known as the Food Yogi, authentically exemplifies the organization's values, promoting a sustainable and compassionate lifestyle. And he's vegan, and you know how much I love that. A prolific author, Turner has written 6 books, including Soul Power and Food Yoga, offering practical wisdom on food, health, and spirituality. Paul, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for given me the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled to be talking to you because the work you're doing is so important on so many levels. And before we started our recording, actually, we were talking a little bit about you have to go feed the bulls. And I went, wow, that's amazing. And so you've transformed your entire life into one of service, both people who are vulnerable and at risk and animals who are vulnerable at risk. And I would love to speak with you. Just let's jump right in. How did that happen? How did you go from who you were before to being this person who is of service on such a grand scale?
Yeah, well, it gets back to my entrance into monkhood. When I was 19, I had this epiphany. I thought, I need to find the answers to life. I need to find out what's the purpose here. What are we doing? And I grew up in a very mediocre sort of neighborhood, not a very rich family, very poor sort of offerings. Didn't have many opportunities. We didn't even really have a park in the neighborhood. So it was quite challenging. And I got away from that and I realized, I want to find the answers to life. So I was a monk for 14 years. And that meant I lived on a very simple lifestyle. I practiced celibacy. I slept on the floor. I didn't have a bed, didn't even have a pillow. I took cool showers and regulated eating. And my service as a monk, my first service was feeding the homeless in Sydney. So that planted a seed in my heart that, this service, helping humanity, doing something meaningful, was something that was very inspirational and very fulfilling, very satisfying. And I realized, I learned from that experience that service is really what drives us, what nourishes us on a deep level. And in fact, it's like the innate quality of the soul. And I've given this example quite often, that the innate quality of sugar is sweetness. You can't separate sugar from the thing of you can't separate sweetness from sugar. You can't separate light and heat from fire. So there's an innate quality of that thing. So similarly, the innate quality of the soul is service, pure, selfless service. So as a result of that experience, for the rest of my life, I've always been purpose-driven. So whatever business I undertake, it always has to have a social component attached to it, meaning has to leave a positive impression on the world, leave a legacy. So that's sort of where that came from. And I'm very fulfilled because of it. It led me to now living in Colombia, in the Andes Mountains, Colombia, where my wife and I run an animal sanctuary. And as you mentioned, I've got to go feed the bulls later today. And they're big 1,500-pound bulls that were raised as babies, rescued from either the meat factory or a dairy farm.
Mm,
And they're our babies, they're our children, and
mhm.
we take care of them, and they're massive animals, but they're so gentle and loving, and it's so nice to have that experience. Like when people come to the sanctuary, and for them to see these massive animals and see that they have a personality, that they have feelings, that they're just like you and I, they just have a different physical form. And it's a very powerful experience for them to see that. And often that leads to them making the decision that, hey, I don't think I want to eat these loving beings anymore. I want to go vegan. And that's really the purpose of the sanctuary.
Ah, you're singing my song. That's so wonderful. I mean that to me. My friend Lisa Robinson, who runs the Red Robin Song Animal Sanctuary, also she's running it in part for the same reason that you're running Juliana's Animal Sanctuary. That notion that once people get to know these amazing creatures, these amazing beings, they go, oh, well, that it would be so wrong to
Yeah,
participate in
exactly.
the so it's that same kind of thing. And yet the work that you're doing, interestingly, it is not necessarily because of the animals. As far no, I won't. Let me reframe that. The way I'm looking at it is, you've got an entire project that's about feeding people. It's just not feeding them animals, and that's
Exactly.
Food for Life Global. And I'm wondering, within that, what was your, like, you could have split yourself, and in fact in many ways you have, but what was your motivation to go, okay, I'm going to do work on behalf of the animals, and I'm going to spend a lot of my time doing work on behalf of underserved, underrepresented people who are at risk as far as food security?
Well, feeding people, was the first thing that I took up. So that, as I said, the first service I had as a monk was preparing food in the kitchen at the temple, and then going into Sydney and feeding the homeless. And I sort of really resonated with that. I like the idea. I like the idea of cooking, and I learned how to cook large quantities of food. In fact, I've personally cooked for 10,000 people in one effort.
Wow.
So I learned how to do, massive volumes of food, changing, a recipe for 10 people to 1,000 people to 10,000 people, figuring all that out, and how to actually, the mechanics behind that. How do you have to time everything properly? And so food relief became my calling card. And I left Australia at the age of 30, and I was still a monk. And I was asked to set up the headquarters, Food for Life Global, and help to develop this project around the world. Because when I was a monk, when I was a volunteer, it was a very grassroots project. There was only maybe a dozen projects around the world. So I began traveling, and I went to your native country. I went to Russia, among other countries, and I started setting up food relief projects all over the world. Now we have over 250. So throughout this process, the journey of Food for Life and expanding it, the message was always uniting the world through pure food. And this is another way that we distinguish ourselves in this particular sector, because we believe it's not just about filling bellies, but it's about using food as a medium of expressing our love and respect for all other people.
Mm.
So, because food is a carrier of intention, and I talk about this in my book, Food Yoga. So in that book, Food Yoga, I explore the more subtle aspect of food, and try to explain to people that food is literally a carrier of intention, and the energetic signatures that touch that food along its journey to our table have an influence on the quality of that food, not just on the physical level, but the subtle level. So in Food Yoga, I make this point that we can literally unite the world by the sharing of pure food. And as a result of that, throughout that, when I started promoting this book around the world, one of my pit stops was South America. So I stopped in Colombia, and I met my future wife, Juliana, and she then introduced me to her sanctuary project. And it made me realize that, oh, if I'm going to promote this concept of like unity and brotherhood and sisterhood and how we're all earthlings and connected and interdependent, then I also have to include the animals. So then the sanctuary became one of our affiliate projects. And I embraced that idea of like serving humanity through serving all living beings and respecting all life, not just humans, but animals as well. And that's where, that's where I find myself today. So we're living on this beautiful property with 300 animals. They're all rescued. They all have a story to tell. And we treat them with respect and love. And we share their story with people that come to visit.
Mm. This isn't dead air, by the way. I just am taking a second to appreciate everything you've just said. I don't call it dead air. I call it anticipatory air. So give me a second. Okay. So I love, 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 love. I mean, this is the thing, Paul, you are really singing my song here, because that notion of respect for all life and honoring all life is one of my central tenets too. And interestingly, I do something with friends here in New York City and in Washington, D.C., where I used to live, where we all put in $10. We go to Costco, we buy enough food to make, let's say, 300 bag lunches, and then we go out and we feed people who are homeless. And yeah, I'll tell you this. So maybe if we have time, I'll tell you the story of Jacob, who 20 years later we knew each other. It was quite a tale. Anyway, the thing that I'm realizing as I'm listening to you talk about purer food is that I haven't done that. Right. The food that I've made has been, yes, there's been an apple, but almost always it would be a sandwich of some sort that we would make out of the store-bought bread, and an apple, a bag of chips, and some sort of cookie, vegan, of course. But it's not what you're describing. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the connection between access to purer food and overall health and well-being. What actually is it? Is it just, oh, there's nutrition? Is it nutrition and that sort of spiritual intention? Or is there some other method going on there to elevate the experience of the people who are eating purer food?
It's a subtle aspect that we're talking about, because what I learned as a monk, there's this concept in Hinduism called prasadam. So prasadam means blessed food or high energy food. Mm-hmm. It literally means mercy. So it's like it's food which is prepared with love and served with love. So it's mercy. It's like it's invested with pure intention, pure energy. So I wanted to make sure that all of our projects serve only this type of food, the purest food, which means that it's not only nutritionally dense, very nutritionally beneficial, but it has a subtle aspect. It contains an intention, a pure intention, which can also nourish the mind and spirit, the mind and consciousness. Because ultimately, we're not just a physical form.
Sure.
And if we just think we're just, chemicals and cells and bones and blood, then we're missing the whole point. Because obviously, we're a spiritual energy animating physical form. And so if we want to really provide welfare to someone, it has to be complete welfare, which means it has to nourish them on all aspects, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So that's what we call pure food. So the way we do that at Food for Life Global is that when the cooks are preparing the meals, they actually don't taste the food while they're preparing it. They prepare it with a loving, selfless intention. So, and this is quite extraordinary, because if you ask any chef at a restaurant, it's part of their protocol that they'll like dip the spoon in and taste it while it's being cooked. They'll to make sure that it's the right amount of salt or pepper or whatever. Mm-hmm. But at Food for Life, we don't do that. We actually prepare the food thinking that this is a gift. I'm giving this to a friend, to someone I respect and love. And so it's out of the question that you would taste the food before you give it to your friend. It would be just like if I were to buy you a box of chocolates as a friendly gesture out of love, respect. I wouldn't take one of the chocolates to test to see if the chocolate tastes good. I would just give you the box. Right. It's the same thing. So it's a pure food, And it's this pure food which has this ability to nourish us on all those levels. And that's essential to, creating this sense of unity and love. And as I mentioned earlier, the idea is that when people experience this food and they experience the love and the pure intention invested in that food, it communicates to them that I respect you, I love you, you're my friend, you're my brother, you're my sister. We're part of a global family. We're earthlings, however you want to put it. We're earthlings, we're spiritual beings, we're children of God. However you want to see it, at the end of the day, we're all energetically connected.
Mm.
We're all interdependent. We need each other. We're all in this together. So that sharing that type of food communicates that message in a way which breaks all barriers. It doesn't require a language. It's just, you just feel it, you know it. It's sort of a knowing. And we believe that's the solution to world hunger. This is what makes Food for Life quite unique in this space, because, as I said, it's not just about filling bellies. World hunger is not a result of a lack of food. The world has the capacity to feed 3 times the population. With food technology today, we can produce so much food for the world. It's not a problem. But why is there still people going to bed hungry? Now, the United Nations will say, well, it's because of inequitable distribution, that the food is not being shared equitably. And that may be true, but it's not the complete answer. We have to ask the next question: why is there inequitable distribution? And the simple answer to that is because we don't have this sense of unity. We don't have this sense of brotherhood and global unity. If we did, hunger would disappear overnight. If we saw each other as brothers and sisters, as a global family, we wouldn't tolerate our brother or sister going to bed hungry. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's interesting because as you said that we wouldn't tolerate that kind of that one of our family members going to bed hungry. I came, what flashed in my head was the same, and being vegan, I think about this all the time, that we also wouldn't tolerate cruelty to a member of our family.
Exactly.
And so, like with the
Exactly.
non-human animals, they call them. And so
We wouldn't tolerate the abuse that they take. Exactly. We see everyone as as family.
right. Yeah, no, that makes, I love the way you put it. I think that makes so much sense. So I want to pivot a little bit and talk to you a little bit more about the actual processes of Food for Life, because we could talk about that notion of cruelty and not cruelty and taking care. And I'd love to have you come back and let's talk about the philosophy. But I also want to talk a little bit about this notion of Food for Life expanding, right? You said in the last thing we were talking about, you said we can feed 3 times the population of the planet, but we aren't. Okay, but Food for Life Global is doing something about it. And I guess what I'm wondering is, you must have lots of projects that you are currently overseeing in a number of countries where there is food insecurity. What is the process of coming into a country and setting all of that up so that you can, there must be some infrastructure, there must be ways of doing it so that the food gets to the people who need it most in some of these far-flung places?
Yeah, we always work locally. We think globally, but we always work locally. So although Food for Life Global is a network of over 250 projects around the world in 65 countries, each one of them is acting independently. So we're sort of interdependent. We're supporting each other. We support them on a global level, promoting their work, supporting them financially when necessary, advocating for them, and so on. And they do their own local initiative, and they work with local farmers to acquire local produce and resources and things like that. And then when they need, we also support them internationally with a grant or something like that. So typically, for an example, in India, we have a very sophisticated set of projects around the country in all of the major cities. We work directly with the Indian government, who initiated what's called the midday meal program around 2000. And so their idea was that they didn't want any child that goes to school to go hungry.
Mm.
So they decided, okay, we're going to provide lunch to every single child in the country. And initially their idea was, well, we'll drop off bags of rice and grains and beans and vegetables, and somehow or other the school will just prepare the meals for the kids. Obviously that didn't work because the schools are not set up to actually cook meals for the kids.
Right.
So then they put a call out for nonprofit organizations to help them with this. And so they would provide the resources, and they just needed someone to cook the meals. So Food for Life was one of those charity partners. So our local affiliate in India started providing meals to children in the schools. So they have these very sophisticated kitchens with pressure cookers, chapati making machines that will make like 1,000 chapatis an hour, actually 10,000 chapatis an hour.
Wow.
These 700-liter stainless steel pots, which have holes in the bottom where they push steam through it. So they actually cook all the food with steam.
Mm.
They can make 700 liters of rice in 15 minutes. And so the Indian government provides the rice and the vegetables, and then Food for Life actually does the work of actually cooking the meals and then delivering it to the school. And then the teachers serve the meals. That's another beautiful aspect
Wow.
of this program. So the meals are, the food is put in stainless steel containers. It's sealed with a plastic tie, a zip tie. And then the stainless steel spoons are put in plastic bags, and they're also sealed. And then these containers are loaded onto small trucks, and each container will feed 30 children. And so depending on how many children in the school, if there's 3,000 children, then there'll be 100 containers will go onto that truck. And then they take the truck drives to the school. They drop off the containers. The teachers open up the containers and they start serving the children. It's really, really beautiful. And then in some cases, it's just a small team of volunteers working with the local producers, farmers, and businesses who will support them, and they'll provide the meals. And we're doing our best. We're very cost efficient, but obviously there's more room for improvement. And world hunger is bigger than one nonprofit can handle. We're just playing our part. But I feel like our biggest legacy for this problem is this idea of uniting the world, promoting unity and equality in the world, because we believe that's the solution to world hunger. And we're just doing our part as best we can.
I just keep wanting to go, yes, I adore what you're saying. Yes, more of that, please. And part of that is that, to me, this idea we're all equal, we're all one big family, and including non-human animals in that is so, it's the thing, right?
Isn't it?
It is. It is.
Particularly when it comes to world hunger and hunger relief, you never hear that message.
No, and
talking about that.
And I'm so glad that you are, because to me, there are so many, sort of as it progresses, there are so many benefits. I worked at, as I told you before we started recording this, I worked at NASA for many years doing environmental and earth science education in schools. So I've taught thousands of kids all about how to look at their environment and how local environment and what it means to be good stewards of their local ecosystem. And the reason I'm talking about it is because a lot of that kind of education happens when you're talking about the fact that we are part of this ecosystem, that we're not lords over it, and we don't have dominion over it, that we are connected, that we are part of it. And so with FFLG, what I'm hearing you say is that part of the message you're promoting is that interconnectedness to begin with, right?
That's very important. That's exactly where the food yoga concept comes in. So that's why I wrote that book, is to explain that aspect. We're not just about filling bellies. We're really good at that. We can feed people for very little money. I mean, on average, it's around 50 cents to $1, a completely freshly cooked vegan meal. But it's more than that. And that's why I created this concept called food yoga, because yoga means to connect. And then food, the idea of using food as a way to connect to each other. So we have this more intimate connection with each other, because we may not even speak the same language. We may have different political, ideas, whatever. So many things can divide us. But food is that one thing which can unite us. And it's a universal concept. So food yoga is not only a way for us to connect as individuals together to strangers, but it's also a way to connect with God, to the spiritual aspect of who we really are, our spiritual identity. So that's what food yoga is all about, and that's a very important part of the Food for Life initiative. Is not just filling bellies, but teaching this concept of food yoga.
And again, I love it. I love it. I love it. You're going to hear me say that a lot. The thing that I am taking away from what you just said is that there's this singular message, right? So food by itself, of course, is crucial to survival, but the singular message of food yoga, of that interconnectedness, it goes, to me, in listening to what you're saying, if I extrapolate, it goes beyond people, animals. It goes to the environment. It goes to the biosphere, to the earth. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that part of it, about how food yoga, the notion of feeding people purer food, can have ecosystem benefits, environmental benefits as well, and improve the lives of everybody living in a certain area because of purer food being part of the equation.
The pure food is the vehicle to communicate that message, but the idea is that we're all interdependent. We need each other. Every single living herb, every living species has a service to perform for the entire ecosystem. Nothing is useless. Everything has a meaning and a purpose. Every weed, for example, when people come to the sanctuary, like there was a gentleman, a friend of mine, who had hay fever. And I says, well, I have a cure for hay fever. And I says, and it comes in the form of this nasty weed, which most people think is a pest. And it's called Scotch thistle. And it's a very nasty weed. It's very spiky with a purple flower. I think you've probably seen it if you've ever been to on the side of a road or wherever there are cows. But if you cut off that spiky bulb and you boil it and drink the tea, it'll actually cure your hay fever. So maybe someone out there listening, if they have hay fever, you can try this. It's totally harmless, but it's very effective. So every apparent useless herb has a purpose. Everything, we're all interdependent for the benefit and service of this ecosystem. And when we talk about food yoga and this concept of food yoga, that's the way to communicate that message, that we are all connected. Yoga means to connect. It means, to connect with who we are as a spiritual being, connect with each other as fellow citizens of the globe, and including animals, and to respect and love and see the purpose and the meaning and the benefit of every single person every single living being on this planet. So yes, and when we have that sort of understanding and we decide, okay, I want to live a life that's beneficial to the world, that is service driven, that is at the least, it creates the least amount of harm, the least amount of negative footprint on the world. Obviously, one of the results of that sort of attitude, conclusion, is to come to a plant-based diet, because it has the least amount of suffering and it has the most benefit to the world and to the planet, to the environment, and to people and to animals. So we've all seen, and the science supports this. When we look at, like, I think you're familiar with this, the United Nations. I think it was it was the United Nations, a division of the United Nations. I can't remember which one, but they brought out they did this research on the impact of the environment that the dairy industry and the farm, basically
Anim- Animal
animal
agriculture.
agriculture was having on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more than all the cars, planes, and trains and buses and everything combined. And that was, very shocking to a lot of people, because most people, they think, well, it's because of the cars, all of the climate problems is because of all the cars in the world, and we have to have electric cars. But actually, the biggest problem is animal agriculture by far. And yet, still to this day, people are not aware of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's part of what you and I are doing actually right now. It's having this conversation is to get some of that information out there. And it's funny because I've just done an episode on animal agriculture and the carbon footprint and that relationship, and it's mind-boggling to me just how much of the hydrocarbons in the atmosphere are due to animal agriculture. So I completely am on the same page with you there. And I could honestly, Paul, I could keep you here for the next 6 hours and we could talk about this, but I know you have bulls to go feed. So I would love to ask you a little bit about how you're the practical things of this. How are you funding Food for Life Global? How are you funding the sanctuary you live in where you have to go feed the bulls? What and then I'm going to just say it. What do you need? If there's someone out there who goes, "Hey, I want to get involved with this. I want to help if I can." How do they do it? What do you need?
Yeah, we always need help. I mean, all nonprofits need help, and we operate in such a way that, as I said, we're very cost efficient. Even for the most part, I've been doing this for 40 years. So I'm 59 now, and I started my Food for Life journey when I was 19. So as I said, my first service was preparing meals for the homeless in Sydney. And for the most part of my career, I've actually been a volunteer, even as the director of the organization. So we're very different in this space in that respect, because we see this as much bigger than ourselves. It's not about me. It's not just a job for me. It's like, this is something which is going to make a big difference in this time, my lifetime, and future lifetimes. So we are very cost efficient. We can feed on average, we can provide a freshly cooked vegan meal for at least between 50 cents and $1 anywhere around the world, which is extraordinary. And that's another thing, is that it's freshly cooked food. It's not packaged. It's not peanut butter and crackers. It's not frozen food. It's freshly made that morning. Rice, vegetables, fruits, and so on, nuts and legumes. And so the way it works is that Food for Life Global is a support office. So we are the headquarters. We're the umbrella organization with 250 affiliates. We provide marketing and advocacy and training support to our affiliates. And also we raise funds on behalf of the affiliate network, and then we give small grants to them. And the grants range from $500 to $20,000, depending on the situation. So there's that. And then the projects themselves have their own independent fundraising. So they're all financially autonomous. It's not like we're managing them all day to day. We're just a support office. So they have their own fundraising. Some of them get grants from the government, as in the case of the Indian projects, where they work directly with the Indian government, and some of them get corporate sponsorship. So we're looking for more corporate sponsors, and we provide a great opportunity for, the marketing value for corporate sponsorship, because we get at least 20,000 visitors to our website a month. We have a reach which goes all around the world, including, I think 50 to 60 countries, because we translate our website to 13 different languages. We have very good domain website authority, so we're very highly ranked in Google and so on. So there's a lot of marketing value there. And then the fact that we're in 65 countries, we have a presence in 65 countries, so there's that as well. So there's a very great opportunity for corporate sponsors to support the work that we do. And then on top of that, the sanctuary is another very important project. Obviously, this is where my wife and I live, and we have volunteers that come and help. We have over 300 animals. And that sanctuary, Juliana's Animal Sanctuary, is also registered in the United States as a nonprofit. And we get donations from, people overseas. We don't really get much support in Colombia. Although the sanctuary is highly revered. In fact, 2 years ago, Juliana won a gold medal. She got a gold medal award from the Colombian government for her work with rescued animals, which is quite extraordinary.
Hmm.
And it's the only certified animal sanctuary verified by the Global Federation of Farm Sanctuaries in South America. But it struggles to, get enough support because typically with sanctuaries, a lot of the other sanctuaries, and you mentioned that you've interviewed a few people from different sanctuaries, the donors will be able to visit the sanctuary and interact with the farm, interact with the animals. But in our case, we're in South America. And so our donors are really a far away from where we are. So that's one of the challenges of raising funds, but we need more support for the sanctuary. And it does important work too, because just similar to what we're doing with Food for Life and Food Yoga, where we have this really important message to solve world hunger. What Juliana is doing is really important because people come to interact with the animals and they see that they're living conscious beings. They have feelings and emotions, and they go away with a feeling of, I think I'm not going to eat them anymore. I'm going to be a vegetarian or a vegan at least. And it's very powerful for people to have that experience, to interact with the animals and to see that they're just like you and I. So in terms of support, donations are really welcome. Corporate sponsorship is really welcome. We've just launched a vegan snack bar line, and these are quite unique. They're called Impact for Life bars, and there are 3 flavors. And what we're doing with these snack bars is that we're putting the measurable social impact as the name of the bar. The bar that actually helps Food for Life is called Feed a Child. The bar that helps the sanctuary is called Help an Animal. And the bar that plants a tree is called Plant a Tree. And 3 different flavors. So right up front what you're actually getting into. You're getting a delicious vegan organic snack bar, and you're doing something measurable, a social impact that's measurable. You're actually planting a tree, or you're helping to feed a child. So we have these snack bars, and it's called impactforlife.shop. You can go visit the website, impactforlife.shop. And then we have some other social enterprises that I initiated a couple of years ago. One is called Guarantee Certification of Social Good. And in this case stands for output measurable. So it's an output measurable social impact that is certified on the blockchain. So if companies want to give back to charity, they want to show to their customers that they're a caring company, that they're giving, and they're not just all about profits. And of course, we all know that this is what most consumers today are demanding. It's called the triple bottom line: profits, people, and the planet. So it's not just about profits anymore.
Yay.
So conscious companies are listening to their customers and realizing, okay, we have to do something positive. We have to give back. We have to make the world a better place. We can't just be about shareholder prices, the stock price. So if companies want to give back in a measurable way, so in other words, not just donating to charity and hoping that something happens, but actually donating and knowing that something really did happen, then that's where the Guarantee certification comes in, because we'll literally sell the social impact. So you can say, I want to feed 1,000 children, and that'll cost $500 because it's 50 cents a meal, and you'll get that certification, which you can put on your website and your marketing materials, and the actual transaction and the tracking of that takes place on the blockchain. And we have an expansion of that concept called the Kindly ecosystem, which is something we launched a couple of years ago, where we're making that even bigger and larger. And the whole operation is targeted particularly for big companies that want to give back in a measurable way. And it's called the Kindly ecosystem. They can find out more about that at kindlyimpact.com. And if they want to learn about Guarantee, it's omguarantee.com.
That's fabulous. And we're definitely going to put the links to all of that in the show notes so that so that that is easily accessible. And I love, love, love that you are helping companies be more upfront and also have greater access to that kind of really necessary giving. And I'm going to put another little plug in for A Billion, because this animal sanctuary, Juliana's Animal Sanctuary, if you are, I've talked to you about when Vikas Garg was on the show, and I talk about it. Oh, I'm talking to my listener right now, Paul. I want to put in a plug for Juliana's Animal Sanctuary on A Billion. If you're on A Billion and you can donate that way, make sure that Juliana's Animal Sanctuary becomes one of the places that you donate to when you're using A Billion. I just wanted to put that plug in there, Paul. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
She does amazing work. You really got to check out her social media, Juliana's Animal Sanctuary. So just the videos are just tremendous. They're amazing.
I'll put that in the show notes too. So if you're interested in seeing that, you can find the Instagram right in the show notes. And I want to sort of, I know that we have, as I said, I could keep you here forever and forever. I would love to do some sort of a giveaway with Impact for Life, because I think, wow, that's awesome. First of all, I need to go buy some of the bars. But if you're interested and willing, Paul, I would love to do some sort of a giveaway of people following or donating or something of one of each of those bars, so that we can get even more more eyeballs and more mouths involved, if you will. So you and I can talk about that offline, I think. But I know that you have to go, but I want to thank you so very much for joining me and for talking about this. This is amazing. You're doing amazing work, and I am honored to have gotten a chance to speak with you for the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And maybe we can even give away a copy of the book Food Yoga.
I would love that. Oh, wow. This is going to be, this is an embarrassment of riches. I love to do that. Paul, I ask this last question of everybody who comes on the show, and it's a silly question, but I find that it can yield some profound answers. And the question is this: if you had an airplane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Evolution of consciousness begins when we master the tongue. And to understand what that means is, I learned this when I was a monk. In order to master the tongue, in order to control the senses and the mind, and to achieve peace and happiness, we have to understand the power of the tongue. The tongue is the most voracious of all the senses. What we speak and what we eat, what we taste, has a tremendous impact on our consciousness. You can know where someone's consciousness is at, how developed, how evolved they are, simply by taking note of those two things. How do they speak? And how do they eat? What do they put on their dinner plate? So when we master the tongue and eating only pure foods, foods which are high in energy, clean, the least amount of suffering, that are good for our body, mind, and spirit, when we eat those types of food, we're elevating our consciousness. And when we speak truthful words, words which are uplifting, that are encouraging and beautiful and pure and sincere, we're also purifying our consciousness. So those two things, we have to master the tongue. Vibration and tasting are the two functions of the tongue. When we master those two functions, we evolve in consciousness.
I love that. And I want to include one other thing to what you just said, or add something. I'm a singer, and the tongue is so important. And it's another, music to me, singing especially, is another one of those connecting things like food is, where you can drop me anywhere in the world, and if I sing, there will be people who gather around, And so to me, that notion of speaking and singing and eating together, in many ways, that is what allows us access to one another. It allows us to really meet each other where we are and encourage each other to grow. So your words and your point is very well taken, Paul. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just like, I'm a little puddle. I'm a fangirl now. I wish I were a little bit more articulate right now, because I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, that you've made your life, and there's something so powerful in that statement itself, that this you discovered that you wanted to do for so long, 40 years ago, and you've made it your life, and you stand behind it every single day and in everything you do. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it and to give us a glimpse into the way of living that is, in many ways, food yoga. And I appreciate you so very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate that, Tara.
Ah, wow. What a great conversation, Paul. Again, thank you. And let me stop now before I become a complete puddle. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Solutions Podcast, reminding you that you're going to be able to find all of the information in the show notes. Go find out about Juliana's Animal Sanctuary. Go find out about Food for Life Global. Go find out about this amazing concept of mastering the tongue. Until next time, I remind you, as always, to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2023. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, keep living what you believe in.